Counting the Sfiras Omer when it's cloudy. Now, let's think. That which we know today is not necessarily that which always was. As a matter of fact, there's been some quite amazing leaps and bounds in technology in the last 2 centuries. The Shulchan Aruch says that if the people in the congregation made a mistake on a cloudy day and they made the blessing on counting the Omer, right? The problem was they counted before the day was over. So they should count again once it gets dark. Techshach, that's a loaded word. Ramadaktakim, Techshach means what? In this context, in another context, it always means what? Sun goes down and now it's six. Now it's Ben Hashmashos. So Techshach as a period, when you talk about when it starts, it means sundown, and it includes all Ben Hashmashos. So it says here, once it gets dark, really, if they made a mistake, they counted Sfiras Omer during the day. How could you count Sfiras Omer during the day? It was really cloudy. So when it gets dark, that's when you should count again. And that's why he says, make sure to count only once the stars come out when it's certainly night. Now, here, the student will know that the Shulchan Aruch, like the Rishonim before him, is basically telling you the Ikar Adin. The main halach is you count when you cross the line between the days. And when the day comes to an end, the next day begins, which is sundown. And that's what he means when he says Keshet Techshach. It means they counted before Techshach, so now they should count after Techshach. And he says, wait for Tzeisoch L'chavim, not because, halachically speaking, really you got to count based on some halachic argument after Tzeisoch L'chavim, like let's say reading Kriyas Shema. He's saying it because of the capacity to make a mistake. If you were the type of guy where you're going to count right at sundown, you're liable to make a mistake if it's cloudy and you'll count before sundown. Then it didn't count. Count didn't count. Pun intended. However, if you're smart and you always wait for tzeis, so you'll never have this problem. You won't come to make a mistake. That is what the Shulchan Aruch is saying. The Shulchan Aruch's dikduk, count when it's certainly night, is because what? You don't really know when Shkia is on many days it's cloudy, like we've had the last 2 days. I would like to point out the fact of history. Yesterday was one of the darkest days, literally darkest days, in Israeli history. Not only was there a sandstorm blotting out the sky since early in the morning, I walked out of the synagogue half an hour after sunrise, and I was looking at the nice high clouds. Normally when there's smog and smoke and dust in the air, it's already low. But this is something I never saw before. It was high like the highest clouds. So there was cloud cover really high, and also I saw it was smoke in the sky, and it was very ominous. And over the course of the day, it got thick. I remember stepping out of the base medrash at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and seeing not only is it smoggy outside, it smells like actual fire. Something's burning. Then my neighbors told me, oh yeah, there's forest fires all over the place. Our yeshuv was smoky. So before they had clocks, reliable clocks, which is most of human history and most of places in the world, the relative brightness of the sky varies greatly from day to day. Not just from cloud cover and other things and pollution, which could have happened in the olden days also, but also due to the phases of the moon. For example, when the full moon night starts and it's clear, it's still very bright. And when you get to the days after the full moon, when the new moon is visible, when the waning moon is still quite big and visible early in the morning, those mornings are very bright, relatively speaking, even before sunrise. The moon gives a lot of natural light, but we've become unaccustomed to it. So depending on the phase of the moon and also the cloud cover, one day to the next can look radically different. And once you can't see the sun, you don't know when Shkia happened. So this halacha was very important once upon a time when they did not have clocks. But nowadays, I like to point out, what does the Shulchan Aruch say about ending Shabbos early? Anybody know? I'll try to read it over here. I'll just get it here instead of jumping back and forth. Shulchan Aruch says, how do you know when Shabbos is over? Who knows the halacha? Read it here. Shulchan Aruch in one volume. Very interesting, very telling. Shulchan Aruch in Orach Chaim, Mark 293 says, Nachrin Tfilat Arvit. Okay, there's a reason we want to add from, we want to daven Ma'ariv late, so we want to add from the mundane to the holy. Don't leave Shabbos so fast. And it says, "Sarich li zaher milaso milacha ad sheyira'u shlosha kochavim kitanim." You have to refrain from doing work, not Mariv. Said we make Mariv late, but there's no problem, technically speaking, even davening Mariv before sundown on Motzei Shabbos. That's a straight halacha. Just like you could daven Mariv early to take in Shabbos. Early means before sundown, like we're going to do tomorrow. So you could daven Mariv before sundown Motzei Shabbos. It doesn't give you the ability to, it doesn't give you the halachic permission to perform forbidden labors, but you could do that. For performing forbidden labors, you have to wait for 3 stars. So he says, the lo yunufuzari mela ritzufim shouldn't be so scattered; they should be sort of connected. Okay, interesting idea. V'imhu yom meunan or yom hameunan. If it's a cloudy day, what? Yamtin ad sheyitzei asafek milibo. He should wait even longer until he's certain he's beyond the safek. Shulchan Aruch times, it could have been on a clear night. They saw 18 minutes after sundown, 3 stars definitely, go do malacha. Nowadays, we just wait. The calendar tells us 35 minutes after sundown, 40 minutes after sundown, now we'll do malacha. Shulchan Aruch says, but be a little bit more machmir on yourself. Why? If it's cloudy. Once again, the Shulchan Aruch is invoking a real life situation. This is similar to what we see in front of us with counting the Omer. The Shulchan Aruch, when he says to count the Omer at Seis, is a good idea. That's what the doctor can do. It is not because there's some objective or even arguable halacha. There might be, but he's not doing it here. To count the Omer dafka after Seis, it's because, well, it could be cloudy and you could get it wrong. So just wait a while. Although there are arguments in the Rishonim, different ones, that Mishnah Berurah brings. The Mishnah Berurah is going to bring something that is said by other Rishonim that is not exactly what the Shulchan Aruch actually says. Let's read the Mishnah Berurah because it's also telling. Okay? Rotzalomar, the Minadin, basically what the Medaktikim say is, according to the strict letter of the law, Hayav Shar Lakelis Bar Mitzvah Techshach. You didn't have to wait for Tzeis. You could have just waited for Techshach when it's starting to get dark, which means Ben Hashmashos time, anytime after Shkia. Af Kodem Tzedek Kochavim, before Tzeis of Kochavim. Techshach, by the way, kind of interesting. The Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah take Techshach out of context. Dafka in the sugya of Arvei Pesachim, where they say Techshach means what? Tzeis. Don't eat matzah until Tzeis. Techshach. But here they're acknowledging Techshach doesn't mean that. Kind of strange. And you see the Korban Nisano on that sugya there. Go look this one up as Shavuos approaches. Korban Nisano, who's quite later, says, after reading the Rush, he notes that the Tosafis took this Mishnah in Arvei Pesachim to mean no matzah before Tzeis. Not matzah has to be at night, against the implied position of early Rishonim that once you've taken Passover, if it's Passover, Mosif Mechal HaKodesh, you could do all the mitzvahs of Passover except eat Korban Pesach, including Kiddush, 4 cups, Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, Hallel, and eating matzah. As we pointed out, that's implicit in Rashi, and the Vilna Gaon even implies that, surprisingly. But what are you going to do? The Gemara there says there's this thing that Pesach, only start Pesaching at Seisach Lavin. Korban Nisano says, note this. This is the first time we have such a thing in Shas, but they never said this with regard to Shavuos. That whole, you have to wait for Tzeis for Shavuos to happen, no one ever said. That's completely non-Talmudic. Okay. Why? Ben Hashmashos Usafik Laila. Once again, the Shulchan Aruch equates Ben Hashmashos with Techshach. Ben Hashmashos time is when it's getting dark. So when does Techshach start? At Tzeis. At Shkia. Okay. Once again. Vazlina Lekula B'Safik D'Rabbanan B'Sfira B'Zman Hazeh. And on the assumption, like most, that this whole mitzvah of counting the Omer itself is today a rabbinic enactment, so you have a rabbinic allowance to do this during Suffolk time. And it's a rabbinic mitzvah anyways. Rabbi Machmir. It's not like it's the biblical mitzvah of reading Kriyas Shema, which, by the way, it's very funny. A lot of synagogues will read Kriyas Shema before it says, even though it's explicit in the Talmud. It's the first Mishnah in the Talmud. But they're going to be like, but Omer, we're only going to count after it says. Okay? Misplaced priorities there. But not only that, I'd also argue, based on the Rishonim we've seen before, like the Rambam, really you can count the Omer even when it's the Oraisa. And they're going to lose to this also. Even in the times of the temple. Okay? In the times of the temple, they used to count from Shkia. Why? Because that's when they used to reap the Omer, like we saw in previous years. The Gemara says there's one time for counting the Omer and reaping the Omer. Yakrava is by day, counting and reaping is at night. And when did they reap the Omer? After the sunset. It's an explicit Mishnah. They'd ask, they confirm, Ba'ashemesh, Ba'ashemesh, Ba'ashemesh. And they didn't say, Yatsu'u HaKochavim, Yatsu'u HaKochavim, Yatsu'u HaKochavim. It's very clear they used to count from when they reaped. And don't tell me, no, they would dafka try to reap the Omer right at sundown, or right after sundown, but counting the Omer, they would wait to say because they read the Shulchan Aruch. Okay? Far from it. The real posting. Ela d'mikol makom, eino nachon lachnis atzmo l'safek l'chad chila. Here's the argument for counting from Tzeis. This isn't what the Shulchan Aruch says. It's not right to take advantage of the suffix. If you could wait to count the Omer at Tzeis, so why not? Why rely on the suffix? And this is a dangerous idea that we've seen many other places. I think it's also been used sinisterly. I've helped to deal with sinister, intellectually dishonest, or even evil individuals who try to, have this authoritarian approach to halacha and community, try to impose things on people. Let's just be machmir for everything. Okay? Let's just make it that, the mechitzas have to be bulletproof. And to make parties, we have to use just the most extreme kashrus, my kashrus, the one I like. That's the most machmir. So that's what do you call it? Like the Rambam says, it's a financial or monetary burden on those who can't afford it. So there you go. That's not a halachic argument. Why should you know? It's a suffix. Well, the answer is Chazal gave us the rule. During suffix time, you can be lenient with regards to rabbinic rules. Further, like we saw when we were discussing the whole thing about the fast days, for example, if Chazal told you you can do something during suffix time, you don't have to worry about the suffix, so you have a pass. If it was good enough for Chazal, it should be good enough for you. Okay? So that's why you should wait for Tzeitzah Chochavim. That's not what the Shulchan Aruch said. Why should you take advantage of the suffix? Okay? So there you go. And here you go, once again. I'd say, no, that used to be the assumption of, for example, the Torah and the Rush. They used to actually say the bracha and the count of the Omer after the sunset. They never had this hakpada. Okay? Fine. So there we go. That's about that important points about Spiras Omer. Have we left out anything? No. Oh, there's another Mishnah Berurah here. Let's say this outside. Going back to the simon we saw about letting out Shabbos, the Shulchan Aruch says Shabbos only out where 3 stars come out in the sky, right? And then he says, if it's cloudy, you know what? Wait a little bit longer until you're beyond the suffix. The Mishnah Berurah says something interesting, something new. He says, if you have a watch, a moresh sha'ot, so you can rely on that. How do you rely on that? What does he say? Something very telling. He says, if you watched your clock yesterday when the sun set, and you saw that it took a certain amount of time after that for 3 stars to come out, then on the morrow, which is Shabbos, you can rely on that time, give or take. It took 18 minutes or so for stars to come out Friday night, so 18 minutes after Shkia, you can let out Shabbos the next night, even though it's cloudy and you don't know. That's the advantage of having a watch. Note 2 things that the Mishnah Berurah is basically telling you to extrapolate from day to day. And that he's saying, he's implying that people don't have calendars. In the olden days, they didn't have everybody his own wall calendar calculated to every single day of the year and every single day of every single year in history, the exact zmanim for ever, right? Like we have, which you could do now thanks to computers. The Chafetz Chaim didn't have a calendar in Radin telling him every single day what, according to the clock, is going to be Sof Zman Kriyas Shema and when is Plaga Mincha. The most he could say is, if you saw the sun set and you had a watch, so you could time it. And the problem with using the Mishnah Berurah's watch is, if it's cloudy today as Shabbos is going out, you're not going to be able to actually calculate when is Tzeis anyways, because you don't know when to start looking at the watch. correct? Unless you have a 24-hour watch that you don't need to wind, and you could see that, well, yesterday the stars came out when my watch indicated 6:20 or so I'll wait until 6:20 tonight. They usually even ask to wind the watches. Watches didn't have batteries. And that's if you're rich. The Mishnah Berurah is mentioning someone has a clock, a Morisha. You wasn't talking about a wristwatch. So there you go. It's kind of funny. Now let's see this. So the implication is, by the way, of the Mishnah Berurah that nowadays we have actually calendars. Everybody has a clock. There are clocks all over the place, and every single shul has 4 calendars. So we don't really need to be so machmir with regards to letting out Shabbos, even on a cloudy night. Why? Because we look at the clock, we know the stars came out 4 minutes ago. We're fine. We don't have to wait. We don't have to worry. Well, let's say, really thick rain clouds, and it's really dark only because there's no moon out. So we're not making a mistake. Now, this is with regards to Shabbos. Take what we know now to the laws of counting the Omer. The Shulchan Aruch said you have to be machmir, maybe medaktik, to count the Omer after it says, because of potential spakis. You don't know what time it is. It's cloudy, right? But nowadays, what do we have? We actually have in our synagogue, many synagogues, computer-moderated atomic clock or satellite clock, luchos, that tell us when exactly Shkia is every single day, right? And there's a big sign in front of the synagogue telling you Shkia is at 7:19 p.m. tonight, and then the clock strikes 7:19, and it's exact. Okay, it's more exact than the Greenwich clock. No one has a suffix anymore. So the Shulchan Aruch's issue of medaktikim is irrelevant because we know when Shkia is. Just like we let out Shabbos with confidence based on our luchos and our technology, and we don't care about the atmospheric conditions and the weather conditions anymore. Kal v'chomer, we could be makel with regards to counting the Omer. Okay, so yes, I believe, and the Mishnah Berurah is basically pointing out the Mishnah Berurah is the one who invoked using a clock to tell when Shabbos goes out. So the Mishnah Berurah would say, if he was telling us the mechaber al pi mechaber, that forget about the suffix. He gave an argument. Oh, it's not good to count during suffix time. If you know the sun went down, and you have certainty like every single day, then it's pretty good. I find this surprising. Many times we daven at Vasikin, right? How do they know when the sun rises? Because they're looking at the calendar. The calendar tells them. They know exactly. They have a pinpoint clock. They know when the sunrise is to within 15 seconds. That's when they want to daven. A lot of shuls have this. Do you think any time before the modern era, especially in cloudy during the winter, if it's raining, do you think they had such a diuk with regards to davening Vasikin? It was a physical impossibility. Even in the base of Mikdash, they wanted to get going with the Tamid right at sunrise. So if they could see the sunrise, Matova Manoim, any day which was cloudy, Kal v'chomer, any day with rainy weather, stormy weather, they could not have such diuk. Correct? So this gives us another very important argument to not be so strict with regards to basic halachic observance.